Voices United is sponsored by the Maryland, D.C., Delaware, and Virginia chapters of ACDA, as well as the Musical Source, and Max Nolin represents 2 of those chapters and 3 are in our areas. Max directs school and church choirs in Bethesda, Maryland, but he comes to us today as the director of the Loudoun Chorale in Virginia. His enthusiasm is infectious and his spirit is bright, making him a great choice to talk to us about keeping your community choir connected in these strange times. Welcome, Max.
Hello, my name is Max Nolin, and I'm excited to share with you today this presentation entitled Keeping Your Community Choir Connected. We're all living through an unprecedented time in our field. Yeah, many of us have worked through national and global tragedies that affected us and our ensembles, but very few of us have ever worked in a time like this pandemic, where the very thing we do, choral singing, has been at best deemed a risky activity, warranting much planning and precaution, and at worst, as simply unsafe. Yet, our field is a diverse one, and the issues we face in all our different worlds are all slightly unique. Like many of you, I work in education, the church, and in community choirs all at the same time. In each environment, there are unique challenges, but also unique solutions. As a school teacher, I can make adjustments towards creating virtual choirs, teaching general music concepts, or even starting handbell or bucket drumming ensembles. As a church musician, my singers are often not just at the church for the music, but for a greater spiritual connection to their church community. I can get my church choir singers to find other ways of musical expression within their homes, or even gear them up to record a hymn or anthem with them. But a community choir faces large and obvious challenges as we all navigate our way through this pandemic. First off, most community choir members are there for the love of music and community, period. They aren't students enrolled in a class or ensemble, and there is often no religious affiliation to keep them engaged. Community choirs are also often funded exclusively through dues paid by the semester or year, and or through the sale of tickets to concerts. With concerts seeming a faraway dream, and with folks wondering if it's worth paying for a membership to a mostly or all virtual choral season, it can feel pretty bleak to be a community choir director right now. That being said, I am what I like to call a pessimistic optimist, meaning I am by nature pessimistic, but work to choose optimism every day. This sort of convoluted disposition helped guide me through the end of my community choir's spring season during the pandemic, into this past summer of pop-up events, both online and socially distanced, and has helped guide my thinking as I look to the year ahead. I hope this presentation gives you some hope, some ideas, and most importantly, the permission to dream big and try any idea you come up with, no matter how big or complicated it may seem. Here is my story. I am the music director of the Loudoun Chorale, based out of Leesburg, Virginia. The chorale is a non-audition choir made up of 150 voices of varying musical abilities and experiences. We put on 3 programs a year, including a large choral orchestral work every year. When the pandemic hit, we were merrily working our way through Beethoven's Mass in C, and we're excited for our April performances. We made the decision to cancel in-person rehearsals early on in the pandemic, given the increased uncertainty around COVID-19 at the time and the size of our ensemble. We quickly moved our rehearsals online with the hopes we would be gone for a few weeks and then quickly reassemble to perform our April concert. How naive we were. It quickly became clear our concert would be out of the question, and then we were faced with the decision. Do we keep holding rehearsals online or not? I mean, there was no performance to prepare for, and rehearsing Beethoven as an intellectual exercise might be fun for some, but not all. Fortuitously, we as an organization chose to keep going, albeit with new and different programming, and we finished our season. It was the best decision we ever made. During those cold and wet months at the beginning of the pandemic, members kept showing up every week to our virtual rehearsals, and remarked how that time of being together, centered around music, helped center them during this chaotic time. Now that you know the backstory, here's what we did and how we did it. I don't go into deep technical detail on any one project, but if you reach out to me, I'm happy to talk anyone through the specifics of how we held any of these events. Here we go. Everything we did throughout the pandemic was guided by these 5 principles. 1, we can never replace the experience of being in a room singing together, so don't try to replace it. Number 2, using technology and creativity, find the next best thing to keep the music and community alive. 3, use technology that the majority of your choir can use and be willing and able to train members on how to use that technology so that all can connect, not just a few. 4, create programming that appeals to the different interests of your members, events that appeal to your singer's sense of community, their intellectual curiosity, and their love of music. 5, and I think this is the most important one, fail boldly. No one has ever done this under these circumstances. As long as people are safe and happy, you can't go wrong. Virtual rehearsals. First and foremost, we had to figure out how the heck to have a virtual rehearsal. It is hard to imagine now, but Zoom was still new to many folks back in March. So to get the most folks involved, I decided to simply live stream myself on YouTube and send members the link to that live stream. Now I have learned to love Zoom, and for small to medium-sized groups, I think it works well. But if you find yourself working with a choir with over 50 members, I would suggest giving YouTube live streaming a try. Here's why. Anyone with a web browser can watch you lead the rehearsal. No need for a webcam of any kind. Folks can still connect through the live chat box on the side. They can ask questions, make jokes, etc. Many members said they actually preferred this to being on Zoom because on Zoom calls they felt they had to dress up or constantly be attentive because anyone could look at them at any time. This way they could sort of see me on the screen and like feed a baby or check on the cookies they had in the oven while still being engaged in the rehearsal. And for you, the director, it is surprisingly easy. All you need is a YouTube account and a computer with either a built-in camera or external webcam. You can make the links unlisted or private so only you and your members can see them. Going forward, I plan to use a mix of Zoom and live stream rehearsals with my choirs. I think all of this technology can be used for all the sort of different scenarios we find ourselves in. In general, a virtual rehearsal, whether on Zoom or streaming service, is going to be more performative for you as the director. And sometimes that can feel uncomfortable. We just don't have that real-time interaction or sense of group unity at any given time during these virtual events. That's okay for now. Remember rule 1, we can't recreate in-person choir, but I know that your members will appreciate your energy and insight. If you are teaching or working on repertoire or perhaps preparing for a virtual or remote choir recording, use your best director intuition to anticipate the trouble spots folks will have. Some of the funniest moments during our virtual rehearsals would be when I would play through a section of the piece and say, basses, I think we better look at that again. The comments section would just flood with basses saying, how did you know I messed that up? It can really be a lot of fun. Using social media for good. Social media can certainly feel like a drain sometimes, but it can be used for good and can really help keep your ensemble together. It is important to note that even before the pandemic, we at the Loudoun Chorale had a private Facebook group for members that was already a really positive and fun space for our singers. These private groups are a part of Facebook. If you probably have been in some before, some of them can get quite large, but in our case, we really made sure it was only the members. They had to ask questions to get in, they had to be approved, and this was different than sort of our public pages where we would, market our concerts and such. This was really just a small community for those of us within the chorale. And it's also always been a great place to post quick announcements, quick things, don't park over here tonight, make sure you remember to bring this. It can be a really good thing, but during the pandemic, it became even more important. Members would often post pictures of themselves showing themselves rehearsing at home during this time. Folks making jokes about having a glass of wine while I worked with the altos, or the best was like adorable pictures of singers, kids getting involved in the musical action. Of course, social media always needs careful monitoring, but private groups on Facebook or other apps can be really effective ways of fostering and maintaining community. Make sure your groups have monitors other than yourself, and make sure you have rules regarding what the group is for and what types of posts are allowed and not allowed. I always tell people when you're looking into these social media groups, think of it like your rehearsal space. What would you allow, what would you expect, and what sort of expectations can you set for folks in these social media groups that are just like your rehearsal space? Virtual sing-throughs. The chorale ended our season by doing a virtual sing-through of the Beethoven Mass in C, the piece that we were supposed to perform in April. In short, from a technical lens, I projected the score and recording of the work on the screen and conducted through the piece with singers singing at home. You can do this through live streaming a Zoom call through YouTube. I know that sounds really confusing, but with a little practice, even someone who doesn't have a ton of tech experience can figure it out. And so you're at a little corner, I think you're seeing a video now, you're at a little corner of the screen conducting while the music is going with this recording. It created a great sense of closure for our work on that piece, and actually gave us all an opportunity to live in a work of music together. And what it really made me think of, and one reason I would encourage you to have these sort of virtual sing-throughs of these masterworks, is how often do we all really sit and listen to a choral piece all the way through, especially a large one? It was a great experience for all involved, and I hope to do some more of these, even if it's not the repertoire we're working on, just so that we can all sit and live in a great piece of music for an hour. It was a great experience. Virtual and or remote choirs. And by now we've all seen, and actually many of us have probably participated in some virtual choirs. There are presentations at this conference talking about how to work a virtual choir, work technology, so I'm going to leave that stuff to them. I've actually come around to appreciating virtual choir experiences, though I do think for many of our less tech-savvy community choir members, video recording themselves and then submitting those videos is still a real challenge. That's why we at the chorale decided to instead do what I called a remote choir, which was essentially an audio-only recording. We did a very short performance of Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee to keep in line with our Beethoven theme for the season. Members still recorded themselves with headphones in while listening to a guide track, but the audio files they made instead of video files were easily recorded on phones, computers, or tablets, and those files were more easily sent to me via email instead of having to be uploaded to Google Drive or Dropbox. Also, for the average choir director just dipping their toe into the digital world, it is much easier to put together audio tracks in an app like GarageBand than to jump in with major video editing that it takes to make those virtual choirs. Again, I intend to do some virtual choirs this winter, but I think directors shouldn't shy away from these simpler options. It can be a great bridge, a tech bridge, as you get to more complicated projects. Non-singing events. I think that music being the center, or the center and the topic of what we're doing, is important as we're planning these sort of ways to keep our choirs connected. But not everything has to involve singing. One thing we started doing this summer and hope to do going forward throughout the year is starting an interview series entitled Conversations with the Chorale. The intent is to interview choral professionals about their careers, musical interests, and anything else interesting they may have to say. Tech-wise, we simply stream Zoom calls through YouTube Live, a lot like we did with the virtual sing-through. This might seem complicated, but again, I promise you, with a few Google searches, anyone can figure out how to do this. And again, if you reach out to me, I would love to help walk you through how to do this. We've done one episode so far with my good friend Shaquana Anderson, which was amazing to listen to his choral journey. And we have several more planned as we go through this summer and in the fall. This event was a lower turnout event live for us, but it has now had more views on YouTube long term than anything else we had done, meaning a lot of people are seeing it and seeing this great conversation and sort of getting exposed to what we do at the chorale. It just goes to show that our singers are just as interested in how the music gets made and what inspires the music as they are making the music themselves. So again, remember, not every event has to include singing. It can be anything that your mind comes up with. And that sort of leads me to the next topic. Just plain fun. So a huge part of our virtual rehearsals this past spring, and especially our summer events this summer, have simply been about having fun. Do not underestimate, again, a good old-fashioned sing-along. Not sort of a sing-through like with the Beethoven Master, but a sing-along where you play and sing through songs with folks on a live stream or just on a Zoom call. This is low tech and high reward. People love eclectic mixes of songs, and if you bring energy and enthusiasm to the event, they will sing on their couches and be thankful they logged on. Also, along this line, we also experimented with virtual karaoke. This was sort of wild. In this event, we had a Zoom call where folks played their own karaoke tracks in the background while they sang over Zoom. The quality of the sound was mixed, and there were all sorts of technical snafus, but the quality of the event was amazing. We had so many laughs, a ton of fun, not to mention our singers were so supportive of one another as they sang. It was a great way to build confidence in our singers, and I can imagine this being a great way to build confidence in any choir, and especially just to what this section's about, to just have fun with music, and especially in a time in a world where it seems like there's a bad news story every minute. Thinking about how music can just simply bring us joy in the most simple way, I think is an important thing for us to think about with our community choirs. Into the Unknown. No, this is not about the song from Frozen 2. Rather, it's sort of what I have called, what we have just, this sort of beginning process of what we've started at the Chorale, as we have just started dipping our toes super carefully into socially distanced in-person events. We were inspired by the many churches that have started drive-in churches, so we decided to try a drive-in sing-along. It seemed like sort of a crazy idea, but it really was quite simple to put on. I purchased an FM radio transmitter. You can get them on Amazon. I plugged the mic and keyboard into that, and then I just sent myself into our singers' car radios. We followed tons of guidance about drive-in events from the CDC and the state of Virginia, and our singers were really respectful of our rules and guidelines. Now, was the quality of music making that high? Probably not, but it was an amazing moment for us all to physically be around each other making music at the same time. It is important to note that none of these events we did had perfect attendance, and that is okay. Different events will appeal to different folks, and some people will flow in and out of your ensemble due to the myriad of struggles that are going on in the world around us. That is why, for me, it's really important to stay consistent in engaging your choir, but to mix up the feel and format of your offerings as we work through this time. Again, folks have different comfort levels, and also different ideas of what's a good time, right? Some people really like being engaged in virtual events and have always wanted to be engaged in virtual events. Some folks get really tired of it. I think I'm one of them sometimes. And so some folks just can't be engaged with things maybe the level they were when you had your in-person choir. Likewise, there are folks, because they are at risk and because of their own sort of lives, will not want to do any form of in-person activity for probably quite a while, and that is their right, and we should totally respect that in our offerings. That's why, for me, we should really look towards diversifying what it is we do, so that all of our singers can sort of feel welcome, so that all of our singers can feel engaged in this time where we really, really need engagement. People want stuff to do, and so we want to give them high-quality stuff that makes them feel productive and welcome. But what about next season? So this pandemic is still unpredictable, but it appears it will be with us for some time. I'm still working out what we at the Loudoun Chorale are going to do as our final plans for the season, but I just want to share with you some thoughts I am having, and I would encourage other directors to have, and some things to plan for, because I think that we're getting to a point as we approach September where we really have to start making decisions, and no one is going to make those decisions for us as directors. The guidance we're getting is all very, very cloudy. And so I think we as directors need to start taking initiative and planning for things, because what my fear is if we wait too long, we won't have the time to adequately plan for a great experience, whether that is in person, whether that is hybrid, whether that is completely virtual. Either way, we need to pick a plan and go for it. So here's some thoughts that are guiding me. First, I anticipate a mostly virtual season, as I'm sure many of you are, keeping rehearsals online and gearing up to record audio only or video virtual choir submissions, taking time to really help explain this technology to our singers this time around, and to make sure all can participate that want to participate. Two, I anticipate making changes to our due structure or our financial structure. We are planning, when it comes to our membership dues, implementing sort of a pay what you can, and vice versa, asking folks who are able to help support other singers to maybe pay more than they usually would, to help accommodate those going through economic hardship. This is not just a public health crisis, as we all know. It's an economic crisis, and so I think it's really important that we think about how we can both help accommodate our members who are going through this time in a respectful way, and also maybe ask more of some of our really generous singers or our generous donors to see if they can help us through this time. Three, I anticipate the need for a video-based pre-recorded winter concert, and I personally would really want to look towards making sure I'm as compliant as possible with copyright law, and that I have the money set up to sort of create those streaming licenses that are going to be needed. This is a really complicated topic. There have been several webinars about it. You'll get a lot of different advice from different attorneys you speak to, and different things you listen to online, and what publishers are saying. I just encourage you to really start that research now, and to plan sort of funds accordingly as you sort of look to doing these pre-recorded winter concerts. Four, I hope for the ability to have some in-person gatherings or music making. These will most likely be small scale, and many members, even if under amazing conditions, miraculous disappearance of the virus, they still may self-select out. But a few live recorded pieces programmed with some virtual performances could make for a beautiful virtual concert presentation. So again, really taking into account all of the public health updates we're getting, taking into account what we think we can manage as ensembles and as directors, and if we want to slowly dip our toe into some super small in-person gatherings, we should think really intentionally, and we should really plan for the sort of long-term planning that's going to take, and all the precautions that's going to take if we choose to go that route. And five, most importantly, I think it is our duty as community music makers to simply keep the music alive in whatever way makes sense for our ensembles in our community. Basically, this is the most important part again. You just need to choose what works for you and your choir. Poll them. Ask them what they want to do. Ask them what they are willing to give up time-wise. Ask them what they are willing to do, interested in doing. You might have to throw some hard truths in there. You might have to tell singers, I just don't think an in-person concert is possible. But really think what works for your group. What we do as community musicians is so important. And keeping that music alive, I think, has to be our #1 priority. And finally, going forward, if you have any specific technical questions about anything I just did, please don't hesitate to email me. I have learned more in the past 6 months than I think I've ever learned about technology, really ever in my life. It has been scary and frustrating, but it's also been a really amazing experience to really just learn again. And so I really encourage folks to reach out and ask people, ask the big, dumbest questions you've ever asked, and really learn for yourself how you can do this stuff, because I really think all of us can achieve more technologically than we think we can. Also, in the description of this video, you can see video recordings of all the virtual rehearsals I led. Please excuse some of my really poor piano playing at times, but you can see that playlist link in the description below. In closing, like all of us, I have been racking my brain about how to move forward through this next musical season, both practically and emotionally. I've been thinking about not only what choirs can do, but what choirs should do during this pandemic. I have consistently sang in or conducted choirs every year of my life since I can remember. For the first 29 years of my life, singing in a choir meant one thing, and now, all of a sudden, it seems to mean something else completely. I am certain we will eventually go back to choir as usual, and I know when we do, we will come back to rehearsals and performances with a sense of gratitude we have never had before. But what do we do in the meantime? After much thought and angst, the answer, I think, is actually quite simple. We make music. We continue to sing, even if it is in our homes or in small groups. We continue to prepare and present music, whether we are recording in a parking lot or singing into an iPhone. Most importantly, we continue to be in musical community together because that's simply what human beings do and have done since the earliest days of our species. It won't be this way forever, but we choral musicians are currently making our own little dent in musical history right now. And hopefully, when music historians look back on us someday, they smile at us. Because instead of giving into a world without music, we kept singing. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. I hope you have a great day.